So welcome back to the Friday Form Guide via the Hot Lap. This is very much a new show, a new format on Fridays where we talk about the big data that everyone has gained from the first two practice sessions, which try as we may to make some sense of it. Well, what we can say is Lando Norris fastest in FP1 by a smidge. Then Oscar Piastri, like less than 200s behind him, and then Charles Leclerc. But let's get into that form guide, shall we? That top 20. Yeah, well, not really top 20 because that involves everyone. But anyway, Lando Norris, as you can see here, by 0.019, the tiniest of margins. Then it was Charles Leclerc 0.2 down, then quite a big gap to the fastest Red Bull driver, not Red Bull car. And that was Isaac Hadjar. Yeah, Max had a bit of a mare. Get into that in a bit as well. 0.6 down was Isaac Hadjar, along with Lewis Hamilton, 0.8 for Ollie Behrman and Kimi Antonelli, who were 6th and 7th respectively. Next up, we've got George Russell in 8th, 0.8 down, along with Max Verstappen, and 0.9 down for Lance Stroll. Yes, Lance Stroll. I mean, Alonso did not take part in this session. Lance Stroll did. Drogovic was instead the substitute man because Fernando Alonso hurt his back. He has back issues from carrying that Aston Martin team. Ha But to be fair, Lance Stroll finishing 10th wasn't too bad. Now, from 11th to 20th, we've got Alexander Albon, Ocon, Gasly, Lawson, Sainz, Drogovic, Tsunoda, Colapinto, Bortoletto and Paul Aaron. Tsunoda will improve, I promise, when we look into FP2, which you will in a second. But to be fair, Paul Aaron got a shot. Sadly, there was something wrong with his car, and Drogovic was called up at the last minute. Shock horror. And he was only a 0.3 off Lance Stroll, which is not too bad. And that Aston Martin going quite well. We know it's quite a draggy car, but it's not doing too bad here. Another team that's not too bad here in the past is Mercedes. Now they are about 0.8 off in FP1. Let's have a look then to see what happened in FP2. Well, fastest in FP2 was again Lando Norris, but this time by nearly 0.3 of a second. Piastri was again second. McLaren looking to dominate the weekend, and it was Charles Leclerc in third. So at least he's consistent. Which also bodes well, I think, for his teammate. His teammate looking strong as well on race pace. But if you want that full rundown for year 20, we've got Lando Norris, just shy of 0.3 down, was Oscar Piastri. Then it was Charles Leclerc, about 0.4 down, about half a second down. Yeah, half a second down was Lance of the Stroll. Lord Lance in 4th, not bad at all. And it's no fluke, he beat Fernando Alonso. I mean, that Aston Martin not looking too bad, who was 0.6 down. Next up, we've got Lewis Hamilton, 0.7 down. The caveat was that his best lap was his second lap, but he did do the fastest first sector, so you have to wonder, there's a few tenths in there. I mean, is Leclerc faster than Hamilton? It looks like it at the moment. How fast? We don't know. Next up, we've got George Russell in 7th, about 0.8 down, along with Isaac Hadjar in 8th, Yuki Tsunoda 9th, beating Max Verstappen. There's an interesting stat I think we'll come to in a bit with that, as I just take a sip. So, Kimi Antonelli rounds up that top 10, which I think is good. He's about a 10th and a bit off his teammate. He needs that confidence after what was a very bad Belgium Grand Prix. So, 11th to 20th, we've got Ollie Behrman. Yeah, why? 11th, you know. It's a thing now for him, isn't it? Nico Hülkenberg in 12th, Ocon 13th, Verstappen in 14th, Liam Lawson in 15th, Carlos Sainz in 16th. I mean, the Williams hasn't gone well here historically. I was kind of hoping it would in the preview, but maybe I over-egged the Williams package. But we'll see. So, Alexander Albon, though, he's 18th in the Williams, which is not particularly great. Gabriele Bortoletto is in between them, and 19th and 20th are the two Alpines of Gasly and Colapinto, who are around about 1.5 seconds off. Okay, so this was FP2, and this is quite interesting because it shows the fastest sectors. Is what F1 has been doing. So interestingly, it's Lewis Hamilton in Sector 1. We'll come into later what that means. And we've got Lando Norris Sector 2, Oscar Piastri Sector 3, albeit yes, it was a 1-2 for McLaren and Ferrari third, but it was Charles Leclerc third, not Lewis Hamilton, even though Lewis Hamilton aced that first sector. And interestingly, it was on his second flying lap he did that, and then he lost a lot of time going forward. Whether it was the tides went away, I don't know. But you gotta be happy for Ferrari. Are they going to be best of the rest, especially with Red Bull struggling? But we've had Red Bull struggle before, and anyone that has been watching this year, Red Bull have a fantastic team back at Milton Keynes. They were going to be doing overtime on that simulator, and I can't tell you how many times have they looked bad and then been fighting for pole, or at least the top 2 rows the very next day. So do not rule them out. This is the lap delta, the 2025 FP2 lap delta. So as you can see here, the difference in time, obviously Norris fastest, 3/10 down, just about being Piastri, then 4/10 down being Leclerc, all the way to Colapinto and Gasly. Now, what's interesting, because Gasly and Colapinto, we're talking like there's just about over a tenth in between them, and the concern for that is when you've got two teammates that close to each other, you start to wondering, is that the car's maximum pace? Because quite often it normally is when you have two teammates, like, you know, Noah's arcing, so to speak, next to each other, which I think is going to be a massive concern, albeit we still have FP3 to sort that problem out. Now, the Aston Martin team are looking good with Stroll and Alonso 5 tenths and 6 tenths down respectively, pretty much. Is that going to remain for FP3, and is that going to remain for qualifying? It's going to be quite interesting. A lot of factors in. If the track rubber's in, your setup and the way the car feels is naturally going to change throughout the weekend. Although, if it does rain, and it rains fairly hard, it's going to wash away all that rubber all these drivers have put down, which again is going to change the way the car feels. But I'm hoping double points for Aston Martin because they absolutely need to, and I hope Alonso's back holds out and he gets that point. He gets the points. So moving on from there. This is the obviously the track dominance in FP2 overall, which varies slightly differently to the Hamilton thing, but this is I believe this is the mini sectors rather than the Hamilton first sector. And it would appear that Ferrari have got very good speed. The top speed in the Ferrari is 318 along with Norris, and it's 360 for Piastri. Now, either that means Piastri's gone for slightly more downforce, or Lando Norris just got better off those corners, because if you get better off the corners, you get a better run. That can make a significant difference. Moving on from that, we've got the long runs, and in relation to the long ones, I mean, for the bigger the charts, I mean, you're looking at the 122s. Ferrari not looking for Hamilton quite inconsistent, if you look, but not looking too bad with the runs. Leclerc not looking too bad. McLaren's looking okay. They had, as you can see, when you look at there, that's the lower of the times. And incidentally, when you look at it, yes, Hamilton may have been slightly inconsistent, but his runs looked a bit faster when you look at the lines than Charles Leclerc. So there's hope there, and we know how good Hamilton can be here in the race. It's just the qualifying that he's not that great at. Although Charles Leclerc has come out recently and said he's not a fan of his own qualifying. So he's not exactly going to be sending himself any Christmas cards. When we look at Alonso, yeah, not great on the race pace there, sadly. And we got Lawson Verstappen. Here we go. Look, I mean, yeah, not the fastest either with the race pace. A slight concern, but I said that when we are going to be looking at it, they have got an excellent an excellent team back at Milton Keynes. They are going to be faster. I think that's almost like anything but a nailed down fact in my opinion. And this is the DRS delta off DRS and on DRS, and it does give it's pretty significant, isn't it? I mean, as we know, Aston Martin, the draggy of the teams. And DRS on though gives this is kilometres top speed 320, which is fairly significant. The reason why the DRS makes a big difference here is because of how high the downforce is. Some of the teams are looking at Monaco levels of downforce, which is why you've got the big distinction with 283 to 320 plus 37 kilometres. That is absolutely massive. Like McLaren are plus 37 kilometres as well. The fastest teams, well, we got 322. That's both for the Mercedes and the Ferrari. So you have to wonder whether, I mean, the Ferrari's got pretty much the top speed, even without the DRS. So you have to wonder whether they are running slightly less downforce, which is good. It gets you passes. But as you know, and as we know, the higher the downforce, the more grip you've got, the more, the more balanced your car is in terms of in those corners. It's not going to slide, at least in theory, which means your tyre wear is going to be better. That downforce generally, but not always, looks after the tyres better. So this is what I think is interesting. The Formula 1 data analysis has got the setups, which is kind of what we've been talking about. And it's basically got that Sauber RBR, Aston Martin, Ferrari, McLaren all reached 318 in their best lap. Downforce and the mechanical setup determined the order, not drag. Now Mercedes, they're talking about, have the lowest drag by far, plus 4 kilometres versus the next best, and Alpine's only reached 314, yet their downforce did not impress. Different engine modes, they're saying, could mask the drag for a bit. For example, Norris seems to be running slightly more power than Piastri. That's interesting. No sign of less downforce, I could be wrong there. But when you actually look at this, this interesting chart, you've got the lowest drag they're suggesting is Mercedes. Now, in terms of the same top speed, it's pretty much a sound about Red Bull, Aston Martin, Ferrari, McLaren seem to have the way they set up their car very, very similar. Now, highest drag, not much downforce. So with Ferrari, I suggested not much downforce, but this is suggesting that's not the case. So highest drag, not much downforce. We've got Williams, Haas, Racing Bulls, and then Alpine. Although, you know, highest drag, not much downforce. That doesn't particularly look good, particularly for Alpine, as they suggested, or the Racing Bulls, Williams, and Haas. So, I mean, yeah, I guess wait here. These are obviously the best of the sectors, and they've got extreme drag clearly for both the Alpine. Sector 1, obviously Lewis Hamilton, in practice 2. Alonso very, very close to that as well, in spite of obviously having quite a draggy car. But then you have the DRS on that straight. Now sector 2, where you've got, you know, fairly fast corners and that tight chicane, and that kind of tight chicane you come into. It's no wonder that McLaren are best. You know, Norris very good in sector 2, Piastri fastest in sector 3, but only by 0.044, where Lando Norris is like 1.5 tenths faster than Piastri. So in terms of best sectors, as we know, Hamilton's quickest through sector 1, which includes DRS zones. Alpine are the slowest there, which again suggests that they have that high downforce. But then some people are saying, as you can see, they've got the highest drag. Now Norris was out of reach in sector 2. That's a series of medium speed corners, and this is where McLaren love it. Just like parts of Japan, where, let's be fair, they were fastest. It was a Max Verstappen show in the end. The McLaren should have won. But when you've got these medium speed corners that Japan has a lot of as well, McLaren really love it. And sector 3 is very similar. Verstappen struggled massively in sectors 1 and 3, and he was the second slowest in both sector 1 and sector 3. So you've got to wonder what's up with that. Does Verstappen have high downforce as well? In sector, I mean, look, sectors 1, Verstappen's 4 tenths off the fastest, and nearly half a second off the fastest in sector 3. Now the one that arguably maybe needs the most downforce, sector 2, he was very similar to Yuki Tsunoda, so he was really struggling there. When was dear old Paul Verstappen. Now, speaking of Max Verstappen, he's been outpaced by a teammate for the first time this F1 season in a session. He's had 33 practice sessions. He's been ahead so far in 2025, but it was Yuki Tsunoda that ended up beating him. And speaking of Verstappen, this is when he threw in the towel. Yeah, Max Verstappen throws the towel back on the track. But what does that mean? Well, he doesn't get a penalty. But the FIA do confirm some kind of punishment. Yes, the towel shouldn't have been there. Yes, you can make an argument that Max was silly for throwing it back on. It was on the track, albeit off the racing line. Max did try and get it as far away as he did. Should he have done it? No. But Red Bull, they've received a warning from the FIA after this. Now, as I've shown you, Verstappen was spotted throwing that towel from his cockpit at turn number 3. And Red Bull warned Max Verstappen that he, a bit naughty. Him and the team representative saw the stewards at 6:20 local time in the early evening over this alleged breach of Article 34.14. Concerning cars being released in an unsafe condition. The FIA have confirmed that Red Bull have been given a warning. The steward's verdict read, the stewards heard from car number 1 team representative, reviewed video evidence shortly after car 1 was released. He threw a towel out. The driver explained that while in the garage, the face towel had slipped onto his lap to the side of the seat, and the team was unaware that it remained in the cockpit. Obviously, otherwise they would have taken it out. They're not going to leave it there on purpose. Now, when the driver realised it was there, he moved to the far right of the track and attempted to throw it as far away from the car as possible. Really, he should have really come in, and that would have been that. But there we go. So they received a warning, which I can understand. You don't want to be doing that again. Now, let's talk about Lewis Hamilton. And what I think is interesting here, the data here, is you see the big difference between Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. This is Ferrari. They did have different rear rings. but they're suggesting that it didn't really make that much of a difference on the straight, but the gap increases more and more, particularly from turn 6 and 7, where they tackled differently by attacking that curb. And then when you look at that, this is the trace. Leclerc is the red. Hamilton is the yellow, and as you can see, Leclerc is slight. They're fairly even, but as we get to, you've got turn 6 and 7 there, and you can see Hamilton, Leclerc faster there, and you can see you can big difference there. You can see the difference, and obviously Leclerc ends up being faster. This is the speed, and it's interesting, isn't it? And when you look here, the trace, that's basically Leclerc's time, and this is Hamilton compared to it. He's above, and then he just loses lots of time there. But when you look at FP2, Lewis Hamilton, he has kind of improved. He loses less time, plus 0.28, and this one here is nearly like half a second he loses there, doesn't he? When you think about it. So this is interesting to look at, and it shows you how much Hamilton has improved and how consistent Charles Leclerc is as well. And when you compare the traces here, it is better, but visually you can see more here how much Hamilton has improved, which is not too bad. Can Hamilton get pole tomorrow? I don't think so. Charles Leclerc seems to have the edge at the moment, but then Hamilton likes to build to a weekend. How many times has he not been fastest in the practice sessions in the past in Mercedes and popped it on pole? I'm not suggesting that's going to happen, but still. Now this is an interesting one. Car performance since Australia so far. So if we assume McLaren is the fastest, Red Bull about 0.03 seconds, and then you've got Mercedes that have improved a bit, Ferrari have improved a bit since Australia, and this is compared to McLaren, who are fastest. Williams and with the Racing Bulls have slowed a bit. Haas have improved by half a second. Alpine have lost time. Kick Sauber supposedly remained the same, and Aston Martin have lost a bit of time too. So the only teams to have gained, and it's not that much on McLaren, are the Mercedes and the Ferrari teams. Who knew? Now, last but not least, we've got Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri narrowly avoiding disaster at the Hungarian Grand Prix, practice clash. And we'll have a look at it in a bit. I don't know what was going on. One of them was coming out of the pits, and the other, Lando was coming out the pits, and Piastri was like, "Oh no!" So I don't get what on earth was going on between the two of them, but they got to watch it. I imagine there's a brown streak of urine running down Andreas Steller's leg as he saw this, and possibly Zach Brown's. It's just, it was just really, really silly, wasn't it? It was really, really silly. Look how close they got. Lando Norris locks up, and absolutely unnecessary. And it was right at the end of practice. Didn't need to happen. Makes it more exciting for the race, though, mind you. Definitely. So there we go. So it's very much Lando Norris in control, Piastri not too far behind, and Ferrari very likely best of the rest, at least so far. Stay tuned for our qualifying report. Thank you very much. If you made it to the end, please click that subscribe button. We would really, really appreciate it. But until then, stay safe, speak to you soon, and thank you for watching. This is now where I'll press the outro. Cheers.